Hello and welcome to Milestone Mindset Live. I'm Nancy Sargent, the CEO of Sargent Marketing and the founder of the Milestone Marketing Blueprint. And I'm here today with Mary Stone, author, landscape designer, creator, and many, many, many beautiful things. As you see her landscape behind her, we're going to talk about how she creates and inspires in that field and beyond. Welcome, Mary. How are you today?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Thank you for that introduction. I have to smile though. The landscape behind me is Mother Nature's landscape at a place I call the top of the world, which is the top of Camelback Ski Mountain in Tannersville, Pennsylvania. And
Ah,
there's a story behind how I found this trail that maybe we'll have time to share. But it's one of the things that inspires me most actually is nature in terms of the creativity of Mother Nature. What an artist.
well, we have time for the more formal introduction, so tell us that story now.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I boy, this jumps ahead into a very personal note, and
Oh, sorry.
well, I don't know. Let's just jump right in, right? So,
I told you
so
I'll
I
follow
was.
your lead.
What's that?
I said I told you I'd follow your lead.
Oh boy, you well, okay. So, I was in the thick of a marriage ruined by the neglect and isolation of addiction to a man I love dearly, and it was a many-year event, decade actually, more than that. Nancy, you know the person. Anyway, I moved to the area I live now, which is Blairstown, New Jersey. And as I was trying to just live my life, and I had a good life during those years, it wasn't that I was totally miserable, but it was very lonely and very isolating. And one of the things I've always done from a child is to find respite in the woods. I literally used to ditch my bike as a kid at a cul-de-sac when I was telling my mom I was, riding around the block, and I would just explore the woods. And so it was part of my DNA, and that and gardening, which is another story that I began as a child. At I think 4 years old, I started planting my first seeds. Anyway, I just didn't really know the area yet, and I drove west over the Delaware Water Gap Bridge, I guess it's called. And I just found my way to Camelback Ski Mountain. And so I went onto the trails and with my dog at the time, and found this trail that you see behind me. And it was really a very, very, very heavy day. The picture here is a brighter day, but it was a misty, overcast day, and there was a spritz in the air, which is basically walking in the clouds, and I felt the little raindrops on my face, and it felt like God was kissing my face, and it was such a comforting feeling. And so, and as you can see behind me, the paper birch are kind of overlaying my head, like embracing me almost. So it was just this feeling that I'm not alone in the world, and that everything is going to be okay. And it was a very peaceful thing. So that trail to me has been a place that I visited during those tough years, and a place that I find just incredible inspiration still. Yeah.
That is so beautiful, and thank you for sharing that. This is a live show. I'd like to say that I usually give my guests plenty of time to consider the questions that I'm going to ask, but I sprang them on Mary this morning. And then I said, we may not even get to those because the show will dictate the topic. So that was very personal, and I appreciate that. I do know all the players involved because we've known each other a long time. And what I hope for everyone is that everyone can be their healthiest self and their most authentic self. And our topic today is creativity, and that lends itself in there. But even in our dark times, in our light times, creativity and expression is key.
Mm.
Um, just to set the stage here, our audience is typically businesses, nonprofits, entrepreneurs. And my guests on Milestone Mindset Live have had milestones in their careers, in their personal lives. Usually they are one and the same, or at least have crossed into each other. And we all have milestones, no matter what stage or age we're at. What we try to do in these 30 minutes is impart personal stories and professional stories and examples that can inspire the audience to take a step in their business or their lives, which will make them more fulfilled and make them more successful. As a marketer, my career is to help companies build and so that they can serve more people, and the owners and the employees and those stakeholders that are involved in those businesses can have a rewarding life and financial reward as well. And one of the things Mary and I were talking about, or I was asking her about, was there ever a time when, Mary, you felt that you would consider yourself creative? And I then also said, I don't like putting labels on things. So to be creative or not to be creative doesn't exist. It's when does one feel like that? And Mary and I met on the business side of business, both in marketing, and which is still my chosen day-to-day profession. And Mary has evolved into this, but we both over time have spent more time expressing our creativity and believing in that as I see it, and therefore actually showing up to serve better. So with that connection to that amazing, beautiful story that you told and why we're here today, I can see why you were drawn to the shift from behind the desk, like I am, and I try intentionally to meet out and meet the trees. I go to the trees. There's many days I'm like, I have to go out and be in the trees. So I go to a local park that Mary and I have bumped into each other at. So Mary, I'd like you to take it from that very beautiful story, which gave you courage to have change, and jump into whatever point you'd like to on how you came to be spending time in the earth
Yeah.
for your career now.
Well, I mean, during that difficult time of my life, there were many gifts as well. And he was a good person. And so that's what was so hard about it, you know. And I don't look at any hardships in life as anything more than lessons to be gained and learned, and growth comes from it. So during the time of the marriage, I did shift gears a bit from the marketing career. You and I bumped into each other for many years, worked together. I took classes. I found a County College of Morris brochure, and they had classes that you could take in the evening. And so I started taking plant science and then plant identification. And ironically, botanical names are in Latin, and I took Latin in high school, which didn't help me at all. But anyway, I've become fluent in, I shouldn't say fluent, but I've become proficient in the botanical names. But I just thought the irony of that was kind of funny when I was in school. And so there was a crossroads in the marketing aspect of things where I was still doing marketing consulting while I was in my marriage. And behind the scenes of that, I was doing some apprenticing in design. I ended up becoming certified as a landscape designer, and I worked with a pretty well-known pool design company. And as I was doing that, I was able to shift the paradigm. And what drew me to plants, as I mentioned earlier, is, you know, my childhood passion towards them, walking in the woods, exploring woods, camping, gardening, and so forth. So it was just a door that opened, and I walked down it. And I think that's one of the things I've learned the most, is to pay attention to things that show up in your life, because there's things that you can explore without changing a lot. I mean, at the time that I shifted the paradigm, it was a gradual one. But then there was an abrupt stop that had to be made, and that was when something happened in the marriage that actually was my permission to leave, and it was a very difficult situation, and and it relates something to dogs, which is going to be part of a book underway. I was petrified of dogs, and then adopted one or two, I should say, on Spontaneous, and that was another gift of the marriage. I was afraid of dogs, and then we adopted two, and I learned that dogs actually represent unconditional love, which was something I was longing for. So, but anyway, getting back to the shift, when I realized I had to exit the marriage, I had to support myself, and I was supporting ourselves together. But all of a sudden I realized, can I make a living doing what I love? And I tried to get back into the corporate life, Nancy. I don't know if you know that. And I interviewed heavily. I had no offers. I am so grateful I had no offers. So what I did was I dug in the dirt further and was able to make a living doing what I love. And so that was a God incidence, I like to call it, or coincidence if you prefer. But it was meant to be. So I have to say, I always dreamt of having my own business. I felt the corporate life was difficult because I wanted to be outside, so sitting behind a desk. But there were so many wonderful things about it as well. And you can be creative. I mean, creativity is your inner light that you're sharing with the world. You know what it is that you want to give back. And for me, it's in my daily work, and it's in the volunteer work that I do as well. And I'm not going to call it volunteer work; it's volunteer privilege that I enjoy. So.
You know what? I'm going to call it that from now on too, volunteer privilege.
Mm-hmm.
There was something very important that you said, and I heard the sound muffle a little bit, which happens sometimes live, but you said something about what dogs are or what they give you. And I don't think that that came out clearly. And I know it was very important. So if you recall what you said, would you mind repeating that?
Oh, I wouldn't at all. So, as a child, I was petrified of dogs, which has nothing to do with being bitten by a dog or anything else. In fact, I giggle because my mom told me later in life that her horse bit me. She grew up on a dairy farm, and her horse Jack bit me at age 2, which may have had to do with my fear of dogs. But so I never thought I would ever have dogs. I mean, as a child, it was like sobbing to the bus stop kind of fear. As an adult, it wasn't quite as obvious to people, but I was a little nervous around dogs. And then we were in Vermont, and there was a photograph of puppies that needed a home at the general store, and my now ex-husband had said, "Let's take a look," and I'm thinking, yeah, sure, whatever. And of course, puppies. So we adopted 2 puppies, and I just can't even believe what I've gained from puppies that live in the now. Somebody said to me at a pet loss ceremony at Karen Ann Quinlan Hospice, I volunteer for doing music therapy. And so I was singing for this event. And the person that was talking about, the loss of a pet was saying that God is dog backwards, or dog is God backwards. And I thought, wow, that's really powerful. And again, I'm talking about God, but God means to me your source. So whatever religion you are, it's so much more just the source of our lives, which is Mother Nature, Mother Earth, or whatever you believe it to be. But whatever that core belief is in your life is what I'm referring to, and how dogs give you that. So that's a long answer, Nancy.
Okay, well, that was worth it. And so back to, or connecting that to the concept of how you're spending your time now. And like you said, I'm still a good part of my day sitting at a desk, but I don't call what I do work. And I know that sometimes people say to me, well, you work to earn a living. I know that that's what happens. And I certainly am grateful for that, but that is never what I think about when I come to work. It is never what I thought about. And it's funny, I used to go camping with my family as well. And I also dreamt of having my own business. And my own business did look like in an office, and it had windows behind it with Venetian blinds on it. And I recently, during the pandemic, borrowed someone's office. Since March 10th, 2020, I no longer had an external office, and which is totally fine. I've been hybrid for decades anyway. But I actually sat in front of Venetian blinds behind me for the first time. And so I thought, oh, I remember that dream. But the idea is, I feel like it's the privilege to work in what I do, because I get to help people with getting their message out so they can serve, nonprofits can serve, or small businesses or mid-sized businesses can earn enough of a living by serving others to have a life, a healthy life. And so I'm really grateful for that. And I actually did not move away from New Jersey when I was a newlywed, which my husband would have loved to do back then, and many of his family members did, and then so did many of mine. But I needed to be by the trees and the ocean. Now I spend a lot of time in Tucson, Arizona, and those cactus are just as alluring as the trees. But being out in nature is so important. So in order to, what I do also want to mention, Mary, while we're here, is that in addition to switching from corporate to I'm just going to use the general phrase of landscape, in the landscape for this conversation. And by the way, I also want to emphasize, Mary, that you said that you didn't get offers when you were looking for that corporate marketing job. In my mind, that was leading you to where you were to be at that time. And I know that when people are looking for a job and they need to put food on their table and pay medical bills, I am not taking for granted how essential it is to have a job. But when you can have the job that also fulfills you, and I wish that for everyone, it is divine. And so you have inspired me. And as I took some of these twists and turns and allowed myself to become more in the public eye, my career has always been behind the scenes. And for those who know me, I'm not really a behind the scenes kind of personality in person, but that was my job. And I loved letting other people, getting other people and their businesses to shine. It was always joked that I definitely made my strategy and opinion known. And lo and behold, that's what I did for a living. So that was a gift. I was also called the loudest boy on the block when I was little. And I do actually, I also got in trouble for talking in kindergarten. So I do a lot of talking for a living now. So we have to pay attention to those things that happened when we were young.
Oh, no question.
So in addition to your landscape design and consulting that you do full service, and you also do gardening coaching for those that want to do it themselves, you are a podcaster and a columnist of Garden Dilemmas, Delights, and Discoveries in the Garden of Life. Mm-hmm. And I think you already mentioned that dogs are part of an upcoming book. I know you have a book in the works. So how do you, and the title of this program is Creativity, Compassion, and Commitment. And I see you exude all of that. Mm-hmm. So without the commitment, it all couldn't happen. And so I would love for you to share a little bit about that intention you had when you wrote your first column about the Garden of Life or your experience there. And now I believe you are nearing 500 columns, if I'm correct.
540, Nancy.
Oh my, I missed a few.
Not that I'm counting.
And I've read many, but not 540.
Well, again, I saw an opportunity that wasn't self-serving. So one of the gifts of doing what I do as far as garden design and landscape design, working with people, is you're sharing stories, you're sharing life stories, you're sharing experiences that people open up about when they're outdoors and in the dirt and amongst trees and nature. And not everyone has the enthusiasm that I have for it. Sometimes you're working with people that just want to have a pretty outside of their house. And but part of what I love to do is dig in further into their personalities and try to inspire more external benefits that can come from being outside in their gardens. So this local paper that I have here, and it's called The Press. I think it's actually changed to the Free Weekly Press because it's free. And it used to be mailed to people's homes, and now it's single copy. It's no longer mailed, but it is very popular out here in the country. I live in a farm country part of New Jersey. It's in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And I just thought, hey, I ran into the owner and do you need somebody to write about gardens and nature? Sure. And he invited me to write a story. And I figured I'd write it during the course of the growing season, right? And then it just kind of went from there. And originally they had two separate editions, New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And at first they only had me in the New Jersey one because for whatever reason they thought it should be just that. And so I went to the Pennsylvania one. And anyway, it was just, and they offered to pay me. I have to say they offered to pay me, and it wasn't very much. And I thought, no, I just prefer to give this as something to do and something to share, because I felt I had something to share. And the questions that people come up with, the name of the column is called Garden Dilemmas, AskMaryStone.com. And sounds a little corny, but it has kind of a personality. What is it? Eloise, what was that column years ago where you had ask questions. Anyway, so that became
Ask
the title.
Eloise, maybe.
Yeah, and that became the title, which was their title, really. And then time has gone on and it's never stopped. I never get a break other than during the week between Christmas and New Year's. They have a photo edition in year in review kind of thing. So every week I write this column, and I dreamt of it being in an audio version. And so the podcast began. I just recorded my 90th podcast episode. So it's quite a commitment. And at times I think, why am I doing this? Because it takes many hours, but I just love it. And I'm learning so much from the people that ask the questions, or curiosities that come from exchanges with people. But the greatest gift to me is just that, being with people and being open to what shows up when you have conversations and when you share the beauty of the world around you, around us.
On that light about sharing it, it may not be a huge focus of what you're doing, but you do coach people to do it themselves in their own gardens in some capacity. And that's a big shift that I made in my business recently, which I'll mention after I ask you about those that want to do more in their gardens. And what is that process like to help them then be able to go forth and play in the garden, play in the dirt, play in the earth for themselves?
Yeah. Well, a lot of times it was actually during the one of the tough times in the economy, and there was a garden show I participated in for years. It's now retired, the show, but there were, during the difficult times, a lot of people couldn't hire landscape installation companies, and so it was kind of a business strategy in a way to market the fact that I like helping do-it-yourselfers. But I've always loved to help do-it-yourselfers, because there's nothing more exciting for me than to be with people that really are passionate about their gardens. So again, I work with beginners that know really nothing about gardening. Sometimes it's just a matter of helping them over the phone, or they reach out through me by email because of the community I'm in. One time, the funniest time was when a woman stopped me when I was walking my dog on the road and asked me why her zucchini was not producing fruit. And then she was an Italian woman, and she was telling me how delicious the zucchini flowers are. And I had to give her the lesson on the birds and bees of zucchini, that you need flowers in order to have zucchini. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it did become a column called Birds and Bees of Zucchini. In all fairness, zucchini have a very unusual pollinating process, and with the decline in pollinators, it's been challenging at times for them to make fruit. Anyway, so it literally is a matter of meeting the folks, finding out where they are in their journey, hoping to inspire them to get a little bit beyond what a lot of times happens. And that is, people tend to follow others, right? Like in neighborhoods, you'll see a landscape that looks like one thing, and neighbors tend to duplicate it, like copy and paste. And my whole philosophy is to do unique plant combinations. I love mirroring nature's plant combinations. And so one of the first things I try to do, depending again on the need of the customer, is to expand the vision of what is possible, and hopefully incite them to become gardeners, or not, or just lovers of gardens. Because the do-it-yourself component may not mean that they're going to literally do it all themselves. It could be that they're going to do the part of like plant selection, which a lot of times is the fun part, right? Not necessarily building walkways. That can be challenging. So
that's allowing more people to appreciate nature and even appreciate other gardens. And one of my favorite farms in New Jersey is a vendor at our local farmers market. And recently I was in your neck of the woods, past the sign where I knew the farm was, and I found it. And I was able to, I actually went to the real farm, then I had to go somewhere else to go
Which
to
farm?
the
Putting you on the spot.
Race.
Of course, they're good friends of mine.
I love them.
How do you know them?
Oh, I know them just from the farmer's market. I want to meet the woman who makes all the soup.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'll introduce you.
Okay, I'm coming up hiking by you. So the fact that we have this farmers market, that is a regular routine of mine for the almost half a year that they're here. And so the whole part about coaching, um, and I've been in this marketing field for so many years, and the reason I created the milestone marketing blueprint strategy was people were asking me, I'm just going to or saying that there was something different that I did when I was helping them with their marketing. And I didn't really know what that was. I just thought I like to do things in a way that made sense. I like to make sure there was a foundation, and what they would invest in would get a return, and then do the next thing. I guess I'm very practical. I also grew up with watching my dad build homes, small business. Also, he always loved to go to the local small business retailer. And I said, why do you do that? And he was talking about supporting the small businesses and so on and so forth. But once I really started to think about who I wanted to serve and wasn't able to because of maybe they couldn't, take on the whole scope. I identified that I've spent a lot of time with nonprofits and small businesses and entrepreneurs, and I could only help them so much. But people didn't take the time to give them a strategy because it's comprehensive. So I created this blueprint to help them create their own strategy with my guidance, and then they can take it with them and also go forward and do as much of it as they want, or we can help them, or they can have someone else help them. So that is not a free service, but these Milestone Mindset Live shows and columns and things that is free, because I do want to share that knowledge. And at this point, since I still love it and gives me the chance to go be in nature when I can, it's a pleasure to share that. So for everyone coming up in their career, as well as maybe at this point, as we are having had a beautiful long career, giving of service, being of service is the core. Anticipating what your customer needs, your client needs, anticipating what you need and asking for and getting support. And, Mary, I could talk to you forever. I just love hearing your stories. And we will wrap this up here today with a few takeaways. And I would like to ask you if there is any one thing that you'd like to share with anyone watching this episode at any time. This is evergreen. There's nothing we talked about today that will have a shelf life expiration. What would you like people to know?
I think one of the things that kind of drives me and the passion that I have for sharing how nature and gardens can heal and grow our life is to find what it is that really lights you up. And that's where your creativity and that's where your service will come in. I found my way. I talked about volunteering, helping folks at the Karen Ann Quinlan Home for Hospice every week, visiting families that are at their ends of life. But it's a beautiful time of life. Well, life never ends, it's continuing. So just follow the journey, see what's open for you and explore it and see where that path leads.
I don't think I could add anything to that profound way to close the show other than to say that Mary's contact information is there at the bottom of our screen. Mine is as well. We both love helping people in our different fields, and there's nothing more that we would enjoy than hearing from you. And Mary, I hope you join me again in the future.
I would love that.
And we'll go on a hike soon. And
I'll introduce you to the Race Farm folks.
Yes, I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't believe you know them.
I know their products.
Yes. So this goes to show vegetables speak. Another reason to garden, right?
Especially when they get put in a soup.
Delicious.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you, Nancy.